people don't always come to us for divorce. They come to us to discuss the problems in the marriage and how they can save the marriage.
Welcome to Love, Exes, and O's. I'm Leah Mayersohn,
I'm Denise Isaacs.
and we're here to talk to you about love, the law, and everything in between. So, welcome to today's episode. Today's episode is titled, He's Your Man, Not Your Retirement Plan. So what do you think about this, Denise?
Okay. After 46 years of practicing, I can tell you that if you're married for 20 years, you had nothing to begin with, and you have nothing at the end. That is not fair. He wasn't your retirement plan. Well, who says that his retirement, he should end up having everything, and at the end of your retirement, you should have nothing after you slaved, took care of everything, and took care of 3 kids? In my videos on TikTok and Instagram, I cannot tell you how many people, how many men are constantly harping on all of the money that they're going to lose. Everything that they have made during the marriage, they think is theirs. The wife did nothing. The husband went to work. The wife stayed home with the children, and she ends up with half of whatever they accumulated during the marriage. Then they say, don't get married. But I say, get a prenup. That's what I say.
Today we're talking about why relying on your partner financially is not a long-term strategy, and how women and men end up broke, stuck, and starting over at age 45.
If you are not married, and the way to prevent having to give up $1 during the 25 years of your marriage is to have a prenup. I have a lot to say about this.
See, I've been on both sides of this. So I have a lot of clients that are extremely affluent and they've worked hard for everything they've done. And sometimes they have spouses or significant others who, once they're in the relationship, they quit their jobs and they stop contributing. So I think it really depends on the situation, because you don't want a situation where you're working 40 to 80 hours a week and your partner's sitting at home doing absolutely nothing, eating bonbons on the couch. And guess what? They're entitled to half of everything that you have. How is that fair?
If I can't find me a honey to help me spend my money, I'm gonna have to blow this town. That's life. You want someone to be with you. You want someone to enjoy your life. And you end up having to give them half of what you've accumulated. Well, during the marriage, there was the enjoyment. And Sam Cooke felt that, or the man in this song felt like there was enjoyment in being generous as opposed to keeping everything from the other person.
Well, the legislature tends to disagree with you. And I'll tell you that the Florida legislature has really put a kibosh on alimony. As you know, they changed the permanent alimony statute. I think things might have been that way 30, 40 years ago, but things are very different now. And modern couples expect both parties to go ahead and contribute, because it's not fair if one person's putting in all the effort and the other person isn't doing anything. Then why should they go ahead and get equal participation in everything?
Let me understand this. The person, generally speaking, is the wife who is home taking care of the children, making sure that he can get up and go to work, that he has clothes to wear, that he has food to come home to, that all the holidays are taken care of, the relatives are taken care of, the friends are taken care of, the whole social life and vacations are taken care
But
of.
that's a different scenario. In your scenario, the hypothetical wife is actually doing something. They're actually contributing. In many of these scenarios, and what I see a lot, is one spouse will go ahead and stay home while the other one's working. We see a lot of cases where one spouse has mental health issues or substance abuse issues, or is just quite frankly lazy and trying to leech off of the other spouse. And that's a very different scenario. I also feel very differently when you have a much older couple that have been together in a much more traditional format, where the wife stayed at home and didn't work and the husband went to work. Feel very differently about that than a couple under 40, where they grew up, where both parties had equal opportunity to go ahead and get educated, and go to school and develop careers. And then one decided to not do anything.
And the
And the
other
other one's,
decided to go shopping
yes,
and have an entire room for the shoes and the pocketbooks.
exactly. It's a very different scenario when you're talking about that.
I know that you represent many very wealthy men, actually,
Yes,
in your practice, as well as women.
yes,
Okay. But the cases that you're talking about, generally speaking, the spouse who was doing nothing was sitting on a couch, drinking and doing drugs.
yes.
Okay. That is a part of your practice. You really work very hard at taking care of these people and trying to unscrew them, you know?
Absolutely. We try to help them with all the available tools, try to get them sober, try to clean up their mental health so that the parties can get back together if that's what they want. Florida law has a mechanism to go ahead and deal with this and to help people and put them in a better place than the spouse originally found them. They have something called a Marchman Act, and they also have a Baker Act process for people with mental health issues as well. And we can oftentimes go ahead and help people with either a Marchman Act and a Baker Act. And if you can solve those underlying issues, you can oftentimes save the marriage because people just get to the end of their rope and they want to change for themselves personally or for their kids. And it's not always the marriage. It might be the substances talking or the mental health talking. And that definitely needs to be addressed.
And in your experience, what percentage reclaim themselves?
Well, a very large number go ahead and can give up alcohol or give up drugs through the use of a Marchman Act. Mental health issues are a little bit more complicated and they take a while to resolve. And most people are what they call dual diagnosis, meaning they have both a substance abuse issue, whether it's alcohol or drugs, and they have a mental health issue, and both need to be addressed. And the first time someone goes to treatment, it doesn't necessarily solve the problem. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times. But I've found that if the partner sees that there's hope in the future, a lot of times if they address these issues, they can reconcile. Or if they don't want to reconcile, they at least start putting them into a better place than they found them. And at least there's some point that they might be able to have a relationship with their kids. And it's very rewarding when we're able to help people get to a much better place in their life, whether it's my client or the other side.
People don't understand that married people don't always come to us for divorce. They come to us to discuss the problems in the marriage and how they can save the marriage.
That's true. And we're able to help a lot of people put their relationships back together and they can move on with their lives from a positive standpoint. So, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is personal responsibility. So, in a lot of these situations where people are thinking of their spouse as a retirement plan, the people have no personal responsibility with respect to paying attention to the finances. They kind of cede all responsibility to the other party. Oh, he or she is going to invest the money. Oh, he or she is going to go ahead and pay the bills. And they decide that they want to abdicate everything and not learn about what's going on with their retirement plans, how they pay the expenses, what their actual expenses are. And I see people coming to my office who have absolutely no idea what their finances are. I have a lot of like high net worth earners who they've never even taken care of their finances. They just bring a paycheck home or a distribution check home to their spouse, and their spouse, who's not really even doing anything, runs their money and sometimes cuts them off from their money. So I've seen it from both sides.
You're absolutely right. The thing that we have to understand, and this is about life, is that you have to do this from the minute you enter the marriage. There should be responsibility from the beginning. You should know the other person's earnings. You should know the other person's finances. You should know what they spend money on. You need to know if they have an enormous amount of debt. Most young couples come to me for prenups to make sure that they don't have to pay back their spouse's credit cards and their spouse's loans.
But I think you're wrong to a certain extent because although you say that a lot of people know what they owe, They don't discuss it before they get married with the other party. If they're not coming to you for a prenup, all of a sudden they're afraid to have the conversation. And I think in terms of love and in terms of relationships, you have to have a frank conversation before you get into a long-term relationship with someone, because you want to know what the expectations are. And I think a very large percentage of marriages fail because people are not on the same page about money. They're not on the same page about family, and they're not on the same page about roles in the relationships. And if they talked about these things frankly up front, it wouldn't be an issue.
I have very, very high functioning women who have climbed the ladder,
Yeah.
and they have been in their marriages for 40 years. And the only one who improves herself is the wife who climbs up the ladder, who goes to school, gets graduate degrees, takes charge of everything. And after 30, 40, 50 years of marriage, ends up being the one who has done absolutely everything, with the husband saying, well, my wife is earning so much money, I don't have to work anymore. I'm just going to sit on the couch. And
See,
it takes a while for her to understand this is not the 1950s. This is not the 1960s. And she's the only one who is contributing to the marriage.
I see a lot of situations, particularly with professional women and business owners and very high powered women, where they have a successful career. And when they go out and start dating, this is very intimidating to a lot of men. And they end up attracting a lot of these blue collar professional types who I think see it as a free ride.
Yes,
And it's
the
a problem.
they want a fancy car, gold Rolexes. They're really into material things. And it is very, very difficult, the professional woman, to sort these things out. I don't want to go and talk about narcissists, but it is so easy to get run over by someone who thinks you're so wonderful. Everything you do is so wonderful. And all of a sudden, what they do is the hand that is going to be held out to be paid for is behind their back to begin with until the marriage.
One of the interesting dynamics that I see when cases are ready for divorce, I'll have a client come in and they haven't seen a tax return in years and years. And I have a case right now that we're handling, and our client was the high earner, and
Male or female?
this is a male client,
Hmm.
and this particular client has always earned a lot of money. And this client had no idea, never took care of any of the taxes, had no idea other than his W-2 wages.
He didn't
All the
even know if the taxes were paid or not
Correct.
paid.
Correct. He
Yeah.
knew nothing. He didn't know where any of his bank accounts were. He didn't know that the wife had hidden accounts at different places and been transferring money out of their joint assets. He didn't know even what his credit card bills were or what she was spending money on. And he was in for quite a shock. One of my paralegals sat down with him for about 6 hours one day, just downloading records, going through everything. And he was pretty shocked at what his wife was spending on and what their monthly nut was for the relationship. He had absolutely no idea. And she had control of all of the money in the entire relationship. And when she decided she had had enough with him, she froze him out of everything. Having seen this particular client, along with a multitude of female clients who have zero access to a single penny out of any of their accounts, who are stuck for over 6 months during the divorce process with no access to funds, no access to temporary support until we can get a hearing. My advice is, during the course of a relationship, you have to go ahead and you have to take personal responsibility. Find out where your bank accounts are, where your credit cards are, what you're spending money on, what you have in retirement, and pay attention to all this information. And it's incumbent upon you to be proactive and to find this information out, or else you're going to be disadvantaged.
There is no reason on earth that from the very first day of marriage, people do not see the other person's credit cards, do not know if your client was earning the money. It was his responsibility to make sure that he knew where it was going. He knew the monies that were going into his retirement account, the monies that they were earning and what they were spending on. He can't say, "Oh, I didn't know she just bought a Jaguar. Oh, she has 3 Rolexes. Oh, she has an entire room full of fancy shoes and pocketbooks, and she goes on these incredible vacations with her friends while he's working." He can't say he didn't know what was going on and what the lifestyle was because he saw it every single day. So, my advice is to make sure that you know exactly what is going on financially. And if you are getting married and you are the have not, the person who is earning less money, that doesn't mean that you're not entitled to know exactly what your spouse, what your husband is spending money on. You have to have two responsible adults in a marriage.
Well, I think you also have to create your own financial identity during the marriage. So what I see a lot, particularly with older spouses, I'll see that one has all the credit cards in their name and the other one is a user on the first one's credit cards.
I see that
So
all the time. I
so
see that
what
all the
ends
time.
up happening is the spouse that comes in might have zero credit in their name and nothing to do if they're reliant upon the other spouse. And this happens with relationships where people aren't married as well. You have to have your own financial identity. You have to have credit in your name. You have to pay your bills on time. You have to be responsible for yourself and build that part of your life up.
The person who has chosen the role of being the purchaser, the one who bought the couch, the one who
The
the car
shopaholic.
and the cars are in this person's name and everything else is in this person's name and they owe $100,000 and the other one buys things, pays it off. You have to make sure that everything in the marriage is fair and you have to make sure that you don't have a enormous credit card bills. So we've been talking about this forever. We can go back and forth on this. Ultimately winds down to you have to be financially responsible for yourself.
So ultimately, in court, love means nothing, loyalty means nothing for the judges. You're not going to be rewarded with extra money from the divorce court or in paternity court for having been loyal, but you need to take personal responsibility for your life.